I'm excited to share with you guys today, and I've been loving doing our plans series. It's been making me giggle because I'm not a great planner sometimes. Sometimes I forget to put things in my diary. Like this one time, me and my family are planning to go out and spend a Saturday morning, and then I realize, oh wait, I'm doing marriage counseling with someone, and I get a text, and it changes our plans, but it was just me who forgot to write it down, so I'm really not the best with planning sometimes. I'm trying to get better. That's why I have a little bit of a giggle every time doing this series. But today, I want to look at laying things down. And this is kind of part one, because I think this is a really big thing to look at. So I'm doing it in two different parts, if that makes sense. And I want to talk about laying things down because we often forget that when we add something new to our plans, there is always something we have to lay down. No one likes that fact. We like to just keep adding things to our plans and not worry about laying anything down. But the more we add, we usually have to lay something down. But too often, I think we attempt to be like a candle burning at both ends, just thinking we'll make it through. And I am not the best at letting go of things and laying things down. I can be honest with that. There was a time when I used to do my crazy MMA fighting stuff, and I remember we just had our second kid, Gideon. He was a bit older, but it was around the time he had seizures, and I was still trying to prepare for a fight. Probably not a time when a husband should still be preparing, because there's big stuff going on, so I should lay it down, right? But me, I just kept adding stuff on, and I'm like, I can make it work. So I'm not good at this whole thing at laying things down, but I want to look at a guy in the Bible who I think can help us with this. So today, I want to look at Abraham's family and his homeland. And then I want to read Genesis 12, 1 to 5a, because I kind of chopped the verse in half. So it's not the whole verse 5. We're kind of going to stop at a sentence. And then I kind of want to look at how did he know to lay it all down. And then I want to unpack different types of prayer. So there's cataphatic prayer and apophatic prayer. And I'm sure you guys already know what that means, so you're set. And then I have a little apophatic prayer challenge. So let's dive into this and look at Abraham's family and his homeland. So there's a verse. Oh, wait. I just mixed myself up. Way to go, Matt. There's a verse in Genesis 11. Right before we get to Genesis 12, and it kind of talks about Abraham's family a little bit. And I just want to read that. So it's up there behind me, and this is what we read. Now there are the generations of Terah. Terah fathered Abram, Norah, and Haran. And Haran fathered Lot. Haran died in the presence of his father Terah in the land of his kindred, in Ur of Chaldeans. And Abram and Noah took wives. The name of Abraham's wife was Sarai, and the name of Noah's wife was Milcah, the daughter of Haran, the father of Milcah and Isaac. Now Sarai was barren, and she had no child. And it goes on to say, Terah took Abraham and his son, and Lot, the son of Haran, his grandson, and Sarai, his daughter-in-law, his son Abram's wife. And they went forth together from Ur of Chaldeans to go into the land of Canaan. But when they came to Haran, they settled there. The days of Terah were 205 years, and Terah died in Haran. And the reason I want to look at that is because Abraham had a family. If we know the story of Abram, eventually on his journey, his name gets changed to Abraham by God. But he had a family, and his family was full of stuff. Like, if you think about it, it sounds like the death of his brother was kind of sudden. Doesn't sound like that was something planned, especially how long they lived back then. So they have a sudden tragedy. The dad steps up and takes care of his son's child. And I think that's another big thing to happen. That's another complexity in a family. And then the dad tries to move to support the family. So the other brother is well off, so he tries to move to help his son Abram, who can't have kids, and help his grandson Lot. That's the idea. And then they kind of stop halfway through. And we kind of hear that the family's hard work pays off. So they kind of have a good life in Haran. They build up a good land. They have cattle, they have servants, they have all this stuff, and they build up a good life. Their hard work pays off. And Terah, when we read Genesis 12, that I want to dive into, is 145 years old. Now, I wish I could live that long. I don't think it will happen, but we'll see. But I just think those are important things to know before we look at this beginning story of Abram. Because we often forget he had a lot of things he had to lay down. So let's dive into Genesis 12. And this is what we read in verses 1 to 3. Now the Lord said to Abram, "Go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you. And I will make of you a great nation. And I will bless you and make your name great, so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and him who dishonors you I will curse. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed." That's a big that's an awesome thing to hear. But there's two important things I think we need to remember when Abraham receives this. The first thing is we don't know how Abraham receives these words from God. It doesn't tell us if God spoke out audibly. It just tells us what Abraham heard from God. God said to Abram. We don't get any more fine details. We don't know exactly how, what was happening. And we also need to remember that he was being asked to leave his dad, Terah, at 145 years old. A dad that took care of your brother's son, that just moved to try to help you out, and now you're going to leave. That's a lot of things to lay down. So let's read what Abraham does in verses 4 and 5, and we read this. So Abraham went, as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he departed from Haran. And Abram took Sarai his wife, and Lot his brother's son, and all their possessions that they gathered, and the people that they had acquired in Haran. And they set out to go to the land of Canaan. Now, I think sometimes we just skip past that story. We just go past it real quick, and we just say, oh, Abraham, he was the guy who kind of started the whole, Jewish and Christian thing. He's our forefather. He just left everything. But we don't sit with it long enough to think, how did he know to lay everything down? Because he lays everything down and takes his brother's son Lot at 75 years old, leaving his dad, who's 145. That's a big thing to do. That's a lot to lay down. And I just wonder, how did he know to lay it all down? And when I kind of think, how would you explain that to your dad? That you heard from God and you needed to go. So we don't know if Terah gets told the same thing. We don't really get that part of the story. But could you imagine if he didn't? And you have to go break this news to your father at 145 years old. Say, hey, Dad, I got to go. Where are you going? I don't know where. God just told me he's going to show me a place. What? What do you mean? How did that happen? Oh, Dad, you just got to trust me. It's going to work out. Lot's coming too, all right? I'll maybe see you, maybe I won't. I don't know. Thanks for everything. Peace out, Pops. Like, that's a hard thing to tell. I don't know how you say that. And then how would you know that it's the right time? And how to lay everything down? How to tell your servants all those possessions you acquired? How to pack all that stuff? How would you know it's the right time? How would you move past all those things of, my dad's 145 years old, or, we just got this new cattle, or I got all these servants, and, man, look at this nice land that I got. Oh, is it the right season? Like, how would you know all those things? And I think there's an answer in two different types of prayer that are cataphatic and apophatic prayer. They're big, fancy words, but they really aren't that fancy once you know what they mean. So cataphatic comes from a Greek word meaning with form or images. So cataphatic prayer is prayer we do using our minds. So some examples of that are like praising prayers. When we get up here and we, praise God for some victory that we had or something God's blessed us with. Or we come to God with repentance. Or we come to God with a thanksgiving prayer. Or a meditative type prayer where we're using our imagination and that kind of stuff. Or some forms of contemplative prayer. And these are great forms of prayer. This is the kind of prayer style that I'm used to, that I love, I connect with. I get to do lots of talking. I like talking. So it's nice to, do the kind of prayer where I get to talk and use my mind and let my mind race off and all those kind of things. And this type of prayer is really fruitful. But I believe we have lost something. We've lost our apophatic prayer abilities in Western Christianity. And I believe that enabled Abraham to lay things down in Genesis 12. Because when we look at ancient societies and ancient cultures, they were really into this apophatic type of prayer, this contemplative prayer. And what apophatic means is it comes from a Greek word meaning without form or images. So apophatic prayer is where we empty ourselves and we lay words aside to experience union with God. Now that sounds pretty cool. But it's a bit hard to define. So I want to share with you a definition of contemplative prayer and practices that kind of has this apophatic roots. And it's from October 2003, around that time. And it's by a council of contemplative elders at St. Benedict's Monastery in Snowmass. It was convened by a guy named Thomas Keating. And if you've never heard of him, read some of his stuff. He's a lovely guy to read. He's really all into this kind of apophatic prayer stuff. But I want to read this definition with you. And this is what they kind of convened, and after they got all their minds and experience together, this is what they came up with to kind of give it some more bones, some more structure. They said this: the gospel is the core of Christian living. It has within it a contemplative dimension. This dimension is God's invitation to every human being through Jesus Christ to share God's very nature. It begins as a way of listening with ears, eyes, and heart. It grows as a desire to know God and to enter into God's love. This is made possible by dying to self or emptying to self. That becomes a radical emptying to God, an experience of God's love through a pattern of abiding in God that we call contemplative prayer. A change of consciousness takes place. This dynamic sharing of God's nature forms each person and opens them to the mind and very life of Christ, challenging them to be instruments of God's love and energy in the world. This contemplative consciousness bonds each person in a union with God and with all other persons. It enables them to find God present in all things. Now that sounds pretty beautiful, reading that out. We would all desire that, for that connection, that union with God. And that's why I want to give you guys an apophatic prayer challenge, because I think it's part one of laying things down. This is something that's really important that we need to do as followers of Christ, I think. And I want to try to challenge you to do this 4 times a week, but don't carry this challenge in any way like a burden. If you don't want to do it, don't do it. That's fine. I just think this is a beautiful way where we can really connect with God deeper and know what he might be calling us to lay down with our plans in 2021. And the type of apophatic prayer that I do is a bit of self-emptying. So how that looks is basically what you can do is you can set a timer for 10 minutes, or you could do 5, you could do 7, you could do 2, whatever time you want. You could grab a moment in the car. But the idea is to dedicate some time. Close your eyes and know God is sitting with you. And then you do something that's a bit hard to do, if I'm honest. But you let any thought or image bubble up and simply hand it over to God. And that's a really hard thing to do because you'll have some stuff bubble up that might surprise you. I know when I did this with spiritual formation with a guy at the coast, it was really hard at first because I would have this really good stuff bubble up, and I'm like, oh, I want to unpack this. But he would encourage us to keep, giving it to God. And then you might have a good, sometimes you have, those visions are like an image of something, and you're like, oh, I want to dive deeper in this. But you got to let it go and give it to God. But the whole idea of when you give it to God is it's without judgment or unpacking. You try really hard not to label the thoughts. Try to move past the whole right and wrong thing and just let it go. And one thing that's really important is if you mess up, don't be harsh on yourself. Simply give it to God and let it go. And I mean that honestly. There's still times I try to do this type of apophatic prayer a lot. I try to do it every day, at least 10 minutes. Sometimes I hit the mark. Some days I'm a bit slack because, I might be sitting down to do it, and then Gideon comes running up for something, or Esther, or, a fight breaks out between Caleb and Gideon like brothers do, or something happens, and that's okay. And then sometimes I try to do it, and I just get distracted. I just can't do it. I can't focus. My mind keeps racing, and that's okay. I think this form of prayer is something we've really missed in Western Christianity. And I think it's something, if we dive into, it can help us. It can grow us, and it can enhance how we know to lay things down. Because that's a hard thing to do, and we don't often talk about it when we talk about plans and what's next. We just talk about adding new things. No one likes to talk about what you got to put down, what you have to give up. And I'm not good at that, so don't look at me like some shining example. I'm on this journey as well as trying to figure it out. Trying to figure out what to lay down. And I think this is an important first step in knowing what to lay down in 2021. And I really want to thank you guys for listening to me today. And I really hope you got something out of it, and I really hope you try it. However long it is, however it looks, it's fine. But I think there's something beautiful in this. There's something beautiful when we can sit quietly enough and can empty ourselves enough to connect with God at a deep level that's beyond words, and it's just this beautiful experience. And when you try to do it, don't try to unpack it. Because sometimes that misses the point. Let the experience be what it is. Because this is a beautiful form of prayer. And I think it's something that can help us know what to lay down in 2021. But thank you guys so much. I'll invite the worship team back up who are going to lead us in 2 songs. And if anybody wants prayer for anything, I think Carol and I will be standing at the side over there. But I'll just close in prayer. God, I thank you so much. I thank you for your love and for your grace. And I just really pray that you help us, help us find this apophatic prayer rhythm in our own lives where we can sit with you in silence and empty ourselves. Knowing you are there and there's no judgment or anything needed, we can just empty ourselves to you and sit with you, God. And I pray that you help us do that this week so we can know what to lay down in 2021. In your name, amen.